Hey, what's up, zoners, and welcome to the earliest waiver wire show on the planet. Today, I'm going to be going over all of the people on your waiver wire I think that you should pick up and how much to spend on them. There is a second-year wide receiver, man, on a team with no number one wide receiver that I'm going to be willing to go 25% of my fab on. Hang around for that, dude. That is the big get here today. And hey, man, I am shooting this at the halftime of the afternoon games. So I will be adding in the comments players that did well in the second half, the Sunday night game, and the Monday night game. And if there is players that I did not cover, man, this is a group effort. So please comment down below, add some players, and I will do the same. I've got all my notes typed out, but you got to hold on for 7 seconds. You can do it! All right, let's start off with running backs. Number one, man, Bucky Irving. He is 29.6% owned. I was surprised it was that low after last week. $15, man, I'd spend on him. 7 touches to White's 11, week 2 versus Detroit. White ended up with 1 more yard with those extra 4 touches. So White continues his super inefficient running, man. And what's his name? Bucky Irving looks explosive and way better between the tackles, dude. So just go back and look at Rachaad White's rushing yardage log, dude. He never gets over 100 yards. I do see Bucky Irving getting those type of yards someday. 4th round rookie, top tier handcuff. Plus he might be a flex pretty soon. Hosting Denver, week 3, and Denver just allowed 100 yards and a touchdown to Kenneth Walker, the 3rd, week 1. Then Deontay Foreman, man, coming up number 2, 1.9% owned. I'd spend $5 on him. I did own him last season. I thought he was a huge steal, man. I started him, and he was the number 1 running back on a week. It was just 1 week, though. So he doubled Ford's rushing attempts with 14 for 42 yards, week 2 versus Jacksonville. Ford did average like 9 yards a carry. But the goal line carries and the workhorse running back for that team could be Deontay Foreman. I still love Ford. 15 plus carries in 4 of his 9 games played with Cleveland in 2023. Number 1, like I said, number 1 running back finish week 7. So there is that in his potential. You know, that is his ceiling. Hosting New York Giants week 3. And the Giants, dude, they allowed 94 yards and a touchdown to Aaron Jones week 1 and 133 rushing yards to Brian Robinson week 2. Target the Giants for running backs, dude. So great matchup there. Next up, Ray Davis. He is 11.5% owned. I own him. I'd spend $1 on him. 9 rushes for 18 yards. James Cook had 11 rushes. This was a blowout, so James Cook probably would have had way more rushes if it wasn't that blowout. But Ray Davis did have 3 carries in the second quarter before that game got out of hand. He did have a kick return. That's kind of cool. 4th round rookie. This dude is 5'8", 220 pounds, dude, and led his team in reception touchdowns in college. So he is a good receiving back where it looks like that is an important skill to have in that offense. And he is built like a thumper, dude. And that is way different than James Cook. And then looking at this team, this is a very, very valuable handcuff and position, dude. The Bills had the 4th highest rushing rate week 1 at 52%. I just did the math for week 2, 58%, man. So they are running more than they are throwing. Look for that to continue. There's usually 1 or 2 teams in the NFL that do that every year, and it looks like they are going to be one of them. They're hosting Jacksonville week 3. Jacksonville did hold Miami to 81 rushing yards week 1, but Jerome Ford, like I said, just averaged over 9 yards per carry against them week 2, so you can run against them. And then let's see, man, we got a couple more. Ty Chandler, 46.7% for my Vikings. I was hating on Ty Chandler, but, dude, he did look good 1 or 2 games last year. He just looks terrible every other game. So 46.7% owned. That, like I said, I'm going over everybody 50% or under on this list. $10 I'd spend on him. He had 10 rushes, dude. That led the team for 82 rushing yards. That led the team as well, dude. Week 2 versus the tough San Francisco defense. Jones did end up with 14 touches to Chandler's 10. Aaron Jones had 5 receptions, so there you go. 11 touches to Aaron Jones. 16 week 1 versus the New York Giants. So 2 games in a row, dude. He gets like 10 plus touches. That is pretty awesome in this offense. Running back 4 finished week 15 in 2023. So his upside is a top 5 running back, but that was sandwiched, man, by running back 41 finishes when he was the starter. So it's like awesome, terrible, but still he's young and this is an amazing offense for running backs. Hosting Houston week 3. They held Jonathan Taylor to 48 yards and a touchdown week 1. So Houston, I do think, is going to have a good rushing defense this year. And then let's see, Braylon Allen, man. I was watching this game, 7.4% owned. I'd spend $4 on him. He had 7 rushes for 35 yards with a touchdown. He also had 2 receptions, 23 yards, and a touchdown. So he had a rushing touchdown and a receiving touchdown, man. He's a rookie. I forgot to put what round he was drafted in. But yeah, he had 9 touches, but Breece Hall still had 21 touches, man. Let's see, he had 2 touches week 1 versus the 49ers. So it is growing, and they trust him enough, dude, in the red zone to be throwing to him and stuff like that. So I consider him a top-tier handcuff because Breece Hall does have an injury history, and this team is going to run the ball a lot. They're hosting New England, who looks like they have an amazing run defense right now. In week 3, they held Zach Moss to 44 yards and a touchdown week 1, and Seattle to 46 total rushing yards this week, week 2. And then next up, man, Carson Steele, 1.6% owned. $1, I was talking about him for a long time. He is owned in all my leagues. 2 rushes for 10 yards. Week 2 versus Cincinnati so far. He got those 2 carries in the first quarter, man. And then Pacheco started getting all the carries. But as soon as I wrote this down, I was like, holy shit, man. He almost had the same amount of rushes as Isaiah Pacheco. So let's see. He is at Atlanta week 3. Atlanta held Najee to 70 rushing yards on 20 carries. So that's pretty good. And they play Saquon on Monday night. So pay attention to that. But Carson Steele is going to be a valuable handcuff still. And then Christian McCaffrey is out, for like 6+ weeks. Isaac Guerrero, I did grab before this game, even though I did not think he was going to do well, but I thought there was a chance he could rip off a 50-yard touchdown because he's the fastest man coming out of that draft, dude, for running backs. 2.2% owned, 1 rushing attempt for 0 yards. That was it to Mason's 20 rushing attempts. So he was, dude, it's all Mason right now, but Guerrero could step in if you're looking for a flyer for a lottery ticket. I do think that Guerrero is a good pickup. 4th round rookie, 4.33 40. They are at the Rams week 3, allowed Gibbs and Monty touchdowns and a lot of yards in week 1. And dude, you see what's happening with James Conner right now? So you can run against the Rams. Aaron Donald, dude, they are missing him right now. On to the wide receivers, dude. And this guy is kind of getting me pumped up. I wrote $15 down, but the more I'm thinking about it, I am going to spend more than that. Maybe $25, dude, for Quentin Johnson. QJ, they call him. He was a terrible disappointment last season, left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths. He's only 6.9% owned right now. $15, like I said, but I'd probably bump that up to $25, man. He led the team in receptions, led the team in targets. He had 51 yards, but he is a big body, dude. He is a huge guy. Ladd McConkey is not that big. He got 2 touchdowns week 2 versus Carolina. We do not know who's going to be the number 1 wide receiver on this team. It was last week, it was Ladd McConkey. But, dude, even in that game, Quentin Johnson was second on the team with 5 targets. So if you're telling me he's getting the red zone targets, that is what I want. 21st overall pick in 2023. Ladd McConkey was also a number 1 or first or second round draft pick. I can't remember. But, dude, Quentin Johnson coming out. His physical skills were crazy. Training camp rumors was that he was the dude and not Ladd McConkey. I heard the same thing about Ladd McConkey, though. I did not believe it about Quentin Johnson. I was wrong. I apologize. Joshua Palmer still dealing with a knee injury, but was active. They're at Pittsburgh week 3, and Pittsburgh they've got Joey Porter Jr., man, so that could hold up Quentin Johnson. Held Cousins 155 passing yards week 1, and see how they're playing against Denver right now. Let's see, Khalil Shakur, dude, 49% owned still, so I can talk about him, I guess. $10 I'd spend on him. This team is not throwing the ball, but there will be a time where they need to throw the ball, man. They've been dominating so far. Their defense is a lot better than what we thought it was going to be. But he still led the team in targets, led the team in receiving yards and everything else, man. He is their number 1 wide receiver. No other wide receiver had more than 2 targets versus Miami in week 2. He had a touchdown in week 1 versus Arizona. And like I said, dude, the Bills have a top 4 run rate. So I just think his upside is not there, but as a flex, I think he is awesome. So, dude, so for $10 for a flex, man, hosting Jacksonville, week 3, Jacksonville allowed Hill and Waddle both 100-yard games, dude, week 1, and Amari Cooper to 11 yards week 2, so that's a totally different story. Jacksonville's kind of a mystery right now on defense. And then Alec Pierce, man, I wrote it off as, he had a couple long touchdowns last season and never really duplicated again. Well, now I've got to talk about him because it's 2 weeks in a row, man. 13.5% owned. I spent $5 on him. 5 receptions led the team. 7 targets led the team for 56 yards and a touchdown this week, week 2 versus Green Bay. He had 125 yards and a touchdown week 1 versus Houston, man. So he is killing it right now. He's going to be like a wide receiver, maybe a top 12 wide receiver when we look at the standings after this week. 2 reception touchdowns in 2023. He's got 2 this year already. He was a 2nd-round draft pick in 2022. So that was with a different coaching regime. But still, hey, man, the draft capital is there. They are hosting Chicago week 3. In Chicago, they have that amazing, the cornerback tandem and everything else. They held the Titans to 127 passing yards and are playing Houston later today. We'll see how good they are against Houston, man. Good luck with that. Next up, I talked about this guy for a long time. Andre Yoshivas, 6.1% owned, $5. He only has 2 targets, but he did catch a touchdown this week versus Kansas City. As long as T. Higgins is out, dude, you can start Andre Yoshivas in your flex. Joe Burrow is worrying me with his wrist, but if he gets better, Yoshivas will be potentially a wide receiver too, even with a healthy Jamar Chase. So $5 just because we don't know when Higgins is coming back. And he was the training camp breakout superstar. So this is kind of coming to fruition right now. Hosting Washington in week 3. They gave up 83 yards and a touchdown to the secondary wide receiver Godwin week 1, and then 127 yards and a touchdown to Malik week 2. Dude, Washington still has a terrible, terrible secondary. And then here we go, dude. The last wide receiver, Wan'Dale Robinson, 18.2% owned. I'd spend $1 on him. He only had 4 targets this week, but he did have a touchdown, so I included him. Malik had 18 targets. So I think he had 12 targets last week. And like I said, there was a game last year that I started him in. He had 8 targets before half. So in my mind, Wan'Dale Robinson is just a PPR superstar, potential maybe. And dude, the Giants are going to be down every game. They're going to be throwing every game. They're going to be throwing the ball way more than they run the ball because of the position they put themselves in with scoring, man. So at Cleveland next week, week 3, they did hold CD to 51 yards. Holy shit. But gave up a TD to Cooks. So maybe if they're spending all their time on Malik Neighbors, maybe Wan'Dale Robinson does get a touchdown and some targets. And they held BTJ and Kirk to 1 reception each in week 2. Holy shit, dude. So Cleveland's defense is still elite. All right, guys, that's it for wide receivers. Going on to tight ends. Number 1, Jonnu Smith, man, 2.3% owned. $3 I'd spend on him. He led the team with 7 targets for 53 yards, which was more than anybody not named Achane. Versus Buffalo week 2. The offensive coordinator after week 1 said they need to get him more involved, and it happened, man. The first 2 targets, I think, were to Jonnu Smith, and that was with Tua. Then Tua went out. Skylar Thompson came in. So what does Skylar Thompson do with his wide receivers and his tight ends? Well, Tyreek had 15 targets in 2022 in that wild card playoff loss to the Bills when Skylar Thompson did start. So that is good for Tyreek Hill. And then there was 2 other games that he did start. Gesicki led Miami in targets one of those games, and then Tyreek led another one of those games. So it's kind of Tyreek and tight end that will be benefiting from a non-Tua starter. But Waddle will be hurting big time. So I do like him here. And then at Seattle, week 3, held Denver tight ends to 2 receptions for 12 yards and gave up over 100 yards to Hunter Henry in week 2. So you saw Hunter Henry eat Seattle up, dude. They've got great cornerbacks, but what about the middle, dude? So I kind of like Jonnu Smith next week. And then here we go, man. I told you could start this guy. Zach Ertz. This guy, Jaden McDaniels, is not ready to throw the ball downfield, all right? 4 receptions on 4 targets for 62 yards. That led the team. The 62 yards did week 2 versus the terrible Giants. He tied for a team lead in targets with 4 in week 1. So he is pretty much the most consistent player on this team so far this year. And then you look at him with Cliff Kingsbury. He blocked less than 5% of the plays during the entire Kingsbury tenure. So he's going to be running a ton of routes. And he averaged 6 targets a game in the 7-game stretch with the Cards last year. Plus, McBride did not break out until Ertz left, dude. So Ertz is still pretty good. I think that he is going to be a low-end tight end 1 for the rest of the year. He is at Cincinnati week 3. Hooper and Henry combined for 4 receptions and 50 yards, and they play Kelsey later today, so pay attention to that. Cincinnati, dude, defense is actually looking pretty good against Kansas City so far today. And then here we go, last of the tight ends, Hunter Henry, man. I've been talking about this guy for like 2 or 3 years. 10%, $5, 8 receptions on 12 targets. This is Isaiah Likely numbers, dude. For 109 yards. Week 2 versus Seattle. The only problem was that only 3 targets to Austin Hooper's 4. Austin Hooper is there, and I think that sometimes he will be targeted more than Hunter Henry. I love Hunter Henry in the end zone, catching touchdowns, and he did not even catch a touchdown today. So that kind of threw me for a loop. He tied second with 6 reception touchdowns in 2023. So like I said, he caught only Sam Laporta caught more touchdowns than Hunter Henry last year. And now we got Brissett, dude, who's going to be targeting him a ton. Hunter Henry, man, a tight end one play moving forward. And then we have 2 injured tight ends, Jake Ferguson and Evan Ingram. So pay attention to that. He's at the Jets week 3. They held Kittle to 4 receptions, 40 yards week 1. And Okonkwo had 3 receptions for 16 yards week 2. The Jets, man, are holding tight ends down. All right, guys, on to the quarterbacks. I hate Derek Carr, man. I'm from the same town as Derek Carr. He is 9.5% owned. I can't hate on him anymore because he just did this to Dallas, dude. Dallas, how do you feel about this? Not good, man. $5 I'd spend on him. He threw for 243 yards, 2 touchdowns on 16 attempts. Week 2 versus Dallas, man. Quarterback 6 finish week 1 versus Carolina. This is weird, right? Because he was quarterback 29 last year in points per game. So he was god-awful, dude. Like, not even starting. He was going to be off everything. And now he is killing it the first 2 weeks. I do not know how to react to this. He's hosting Philadelphia week 3. They allowed 260 passing yards and 2 touchdowns to Love in week 1 and are playing Kirk Cousins Monday night. But so far, they've had a terrible secondary for a couple years in a row. And then here we go, dude. Sam Darnold. I told you, man. If he did well today, I'm going to pick him up. So I'm picking him up. 5.6% owned. $5. I'm going to start starting him over Matthew Stafford. Cooper Kupp looks injured. Everybody's injured for the Rams, man. So Sam Darnold is going up the rankings for me. Threw for 268 yards, 2 touchdowns versus the tough San Francisco, man. QB3 out of the early games this week. And again, man, I just want to say that Nick Mullins scored 19 plus fantasy points in 3 of his 4 starts last year for the Vikings at the end of the year. So 19 plus fantasy points for a quarterback is amazing. And I think that Sam Darnold is better than Nick Mullins. Hosting Houston in week 3, Houston allowed 212 passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns to Anthony Richardson week 1. You saw Anthony Richardson not be able to move the ball at all this week. But they're playing Caleb Williams Sunday night. So check and see if Houston's going to be passing defense is good, because I said their rushing defense is good. And then again, last quarterback on here, Skylar Thompson, don't do it, man. So he's averaged 6 fantasy points per game, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions in like the 2.5 games that he played. Dude, just don't do it. He's terrible. You think that he is good at rushing the ball. He averages like 2 rushing yards per game, man. So Skylar Thompson, I'm sorry, but do not pick him up. And then I have one defense on here for you, the Raiders. They're hosting Carolina week 3. All right. So start anybody against Carolina. I think it was the Giants, but the Giants are starting against somebody that's terrible. You don't want to start. Oh, that's already owned a lot. I think it's like the Jets or something like that. But a team that is available on the waiver wire, and we'll have an amazing week next week, the Raiders versus Carolina. All right, everybody, that is the show. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I earned a thumbs up. Hopefully I earned a subscription, man. If you like or subscribe, it will push our show out to many more people, and that is exactly what our show needs right now, man. So shout out to our Patreons, Carter Mario and Harold Corman. We do have a Patreon if you want to support the show, man. Please help us there. That is the only way we can get away from our work and spend more time doing fantasy football. We have our live drinking shows, Q&A on Friday. We'll answer all your questions. We have our smashes and crashes coming out, Tuesday morning? All right? So keep an eye out for that, man. Put on notifications. You might even get a notification. This is Tyler, Big Turd Ward, and this is the Fantasy Red Zone, and I appreciate you.